As I was gathering leaves as mulch for my garden beds to hold in moisture, I could see that no matter how much I mulched, my veggies were being baked by the intensity of the Florida sun. I had plans for a shade cover later during the summer, but it was only May, and we were getting temperatures we normally see in July. I needed to build a shade cover now, or my plants would burn up from the heat. Last summer, I built a shade cover that worked well, but I had to make several to cover each bed. And I wanted something that provided more height for the sunflowers and also covered a larger space. I knew my shade concept worked, but what if I expanded it, almost like a polytunnel, to shade more of the long beds where a good number of my plants were growing? I did some quick calculations and figured I would need 5 half-inch PVC pipes. I would use 2 from last year for a total of 7 to create a cover that would span both long beds and then join them at the top to give me the height I wanted. And then the fun began. First, I tried putting a stick inside and taping the 2 pipes together, but the tape didn't hold and the stick broke from the pressure of the 2 sides. Next, I tried using a connector that would slide over the 2 sides and hold them together. All I succeeded in doing was creating a catapult that threw the connector across the yard. Then I got the great idea to use a larger stick and then tape the connector over it. This didn't even get to the point of trying to install it, as the stick once again broke and the tape didn't hold. Needless to say, by now I was feeling like Wile E. Coyote, and the shade cover frame was the Roadrunner. My frustration told me I needed to sit down and think my way out of the situation before I tried anything else. After a lot of brainstorming, another trip to the big box store was in the cards to get a smaller connector that would hold the 2 sides tightly together. But it was only when I got to the PVC section of the store that I realized I didn't need another connector, but a 3/4-inch PVC pipe that would fit over the half-inch pipe I already had. I could cut it to the length I needed, it would not break, and hold the 2 sides together tightly. I knew the clerk thought I was a little crazy as I bought 1 3/4-inch pipe, but by now I really didn't care. I decided to cut 12 inches for the connector pipe that would allow each side 6 inches inside the connection. And if I made a mistake, I still had almost 8 feet of the 10-foot pipe left to make corrections. However, it made sense to test the new setup before investing more effort into creating the frame. And what do you know? The two ends slipped snugly into the connection. And when I slid the ends over the rebar anchors, there was no breaking or disconnection. It worked. And now I was ready to add the extra rebar to the outer sections of the long beds to make the frame. The second pipe went on with no problems. My days of being Wile E. Coyote were over. I reused the PVC pipe from last year's cover for the back portion, despite it being curved to a lower level. No worries, I already had almost 8 feet of the 3/4 inch pipe left to brace it into place and let the heat from the sun correct the shape. I was now ready to create a spine for the top of the frame. I started with the middle section so it would act as a support for the pipe across the top. I used zip ties in an X pattern to secure it to the top. And then moved on to the front and then the back. Just to make certain the zip ties would hold, I came back and used electrical tape to secure the spine in place. I'd planned to use a couple of old sheets sewed together, but realized I had a shade cloth I used on the pergola last summer and decided that would work just as well. I started in the middle and spread the cloth over the frame. I later used safety pins to pin it into place. Once the cloth had been pinned on all sides, I did a walk around to make sure it was anchored in place. I even did a walk under and lifted my arm to see how much top height I had. I could also feel the difference in temperature under the cover, and the sun was not beating down on the veggies. I got that part done just in time because I was really sweating and it had begun to get really hot. Once I was sure everything was secure, I went back and zip-tied the cloth to the frame, running the zip tie through the cloth for a strong hold. I'm pleased with how the shade cover turned out because it allows my veggies to get sunlight, but shades them from the scorching sun during the hottest part of the day, while still allowing them to grow as tall as they want. And I didn't spend a fortune at Acme Supplies. See you next time.